Let me ask you something that may hit a little too close to home. Have you ever suffered so deeply that it made you question who you are and who you're supposed to become? Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe losing someone you never thought you'd have to say goodbye to. Maybe waking up every day feeling stuck, like life stopped making sense. Or maybe it's the silent kind of suffering, the one nobody sees, but it eats at you anyway. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your suffering is trying to teach you something, not to break you, but to build something inside you that can't be broken. Sounds dramatic, right? But wait till you hear this. In the darkest place a human can imagine, inside the Nazi concentration camps, there were people who discovered a truth so powerful, it still changes lives today. And that truth came from Viktor Frankl. But before we dive into his philosophy, we have to start where his own hero's journey began, inside a world designed to crush meaning, yet accidentally revealed its deepest power. The call to adventure, when suffering shows up uninvited. Every hero's journey starts with life falling apart, maybe not in a movie-level explosion, but in that quiet, personal way that feels just as devastating. That's where you come in. And that's where Frankl begins. In Man's Search for Meaning, he describes how prisoners arrived at Auschwitz and instantly lost everything. Their families, their identity, their dignity, even their hair and clothes. They went from being human beings to being numbers. And yet, this is where it gets real. Frankl noticed something strange. Not everyone responded the same way. Some collapsed emotionally the moment their old life vanished. Others held on to tiny sparks of purpose. Purpose so small, you'd think it wouldn't matter. A crust of bread, a story, a memory of a loved one, a sunset peeking through barbed wire. And somehow, those tiny sparks kept them alive. One of Frankl's most famous lines comes from this exact experience. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Think about that. Your freedom to choose who you are, even when everything else is out of your hands, cannot be taken from you. Not by the world, not by your past, not by your suffering. That's the core idea of this entire video. Suffering doesn't automatically destroy you. It offers you a choice, and that choice can transform you. But here's the twist. Most people never realize that until life slams them into a wall. Crossing the threshold, the world turns dark. Frankl described how prisoners weren't just physically dying, they were emotionally collapsing. When a man gave up on finding meaning, his body followed. They called it becoming a Musulman, the walking dead. Not zombies, but people who had stopped believing that tomorrow had anything to offer. And here's where your story mirrors theirs more than you think. Ever had a moment where you felt emotionally numb? Not sad, not angry, just empty? Like your soul went on airplane mode? That's the modern version of the Musulman. Suffering without meaning leads to emotional shutdown. But Frankl discovered something life-changing. Meaning is the antidote. And you don't need perfect circumstances to find it. In fact, some kinds of meaning can only be found in suffering. But wait till you hear this. The 3 paths to meaning, born in hell. While surviving the camps, Frankl noticed prisoners found meaning in 3 ways. 1. Through work or a deed. Doing something that mattered, helping someone, offering comfort, or holding on to a dream of future work. 2. Through love. Thinking of a loved one, even if they were gone. Love outlasted the cruelty of the world. 3. Through the attitude we take toward suffering. The dignity you hold when you can't change your situation. This one hits the hardest, because it applies to your life right now. You can't always avoid suffering, but you can decide whether your story stops there or starts there. But here's where things get real. Because Frankl's story isn't just history, it's a mirror. A brutal, honest mirror that asks you, what do you cling to when everything else is stripped away? Most people never think about that. Not until life forces them to. Maybe you felt a smaller version of that stripping, not a concentration camp, of course, but your own kind of collapse. A breakup that hollowed you out. A job loss that made you question your worth. A failure that left you wondering, who even am I without what I used to have? We've all been there, in our own ways. The scenery is different, but the suffering? The suffering feels eerily familiar. And Frankl would look you in the eyes and say, you are not defined by what you've lost, but by what you choose next. Wait till you hear this. The moment Frankl saw what others couldn't. One freezing morning in the camp, after hours of forced labor, Frankl noticed something strange. 2 prisoners walked ahead of him, both starving, both exhausted, both living in unimaginable hell. But one of them was humming. Humming. Frankl later wrote that he realized something profound in that moment. Some people still protected a tiny piece of their inner world, something no guard could take away. And that changed everything for him. He realized the Nazis controlled their bodies, their time, their environment, but not their attitude, not their interpretation, not their inner freedom. That was the seed of logotherapy, the idea that even when everything is on fire, you still get to decide what it means. Let that sink in for a second, because right now, there's something in your life you're treating like a prison, a toxic job, a messy past, someone's opinion, your own fear. But the question Frankl throws at you is this: what meaning are you giving it? Not the meaning society gives, not the meaning your trauma gives, not the meaning your anxiety whispers at 3 a.m., but your meaning, your choice. And once you realize that, really realize it, suffering no longer becomes a dead end. It becomes raw material. The same way fire can destroy steel or forge it. The 3 paths to meaning. Frankl said there were 3 main ways to find meaning, and once you understand them, your suffering starts looking very different. Path 1. Meaning through work or a deed. Not your job, your purposeful action, creating, helping, contributing, doing something that makes the world even 1% better. Even in the camps, a prisoner who gave half his bread rations to someone weaker found meaning. A tiny deed, a massive transformation. Path 2. Meaning through love. Not romance, not even relationships, but love as a force. Frankl survived horror by imagining conversations with his wife, by holding on to love as his inner anchor, long before he learned she was already gone. Love that lives in memory, love that guides you even when the person isn't here anymore. You have someone like that too, someone whose face or voice or memory pulls you forward when you'd rather sink. Path 3. Meaning through suffering. This is the hardest one, the real test. Frankl didn't glorify pain. He wasn't saying, go chase struggle. But when life cornered you with unavoidable suffering, grief, heartbreak, failure, illness, you could choose to face it with dignity and grow through it. This is where your power is hiding, not in avoiding the pain, but in transforming it. But here's the part that hits the deepest. Frankl said the meaning of life isn't one giant cosmic answer. It's not something you figure out at 2 a.m. Googling, what is my purpose? Meaning changes, moment to moment, day to day. Some days meaning is, show up even though I'm tired. Other days it's, have that hard conversation. Sometimes it's, let go. Sometimes, start over. Meaning evolves as you do, and if you don't choose one, life chooses one for you. Now, the next part of this journey is powerful.
It's where Frankl reveals the single mindset shift that separates people who break from people who rise.
Here's where things get really interesting. Because Frankl eventually noticed something that most psychologists today still struggle to explain. Two people can experience the same pain, the same loss, the same impossible situation, but one collapses and the other becomes unstoppable. So what makes the difference? Frankl says it comes down to one thing: the meaning you attach to your suffering. He tells a story about a man who lost his wife and was drowning in grief. The man asked Frankl, "Why should I go on living?" Pain had swallowed his entire world. Every day felt pointless. Frankl didn't say, "It gets better." He didn't say, "Think positive." He didn't say, "Time heals all wounds." Instead, he asked a question that hit the man straight in the soul. What would have happened if you had died first, and your wife had been the one left alone? The man froze. He imagined her suffering, her loneliness, her heartbreak. And in that moment, Frankl quietly said, "See, you spared her that suffering. Now your pain has meaning." The room fell silent. It didn't erase the man's grief. It reframed it. It transformed it. And sometimes, that's all we need. Your own pain might be carrying a meaning you haven't seen yet, a meaning waiting to be discovered, not invented. And the moment you see it, your suffering becomes fuel. Wait till you hear this. The gap that changes everything. Frankl says there is a tiny gap between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. It's microscopic, barely noticeable, but it's everything. It's the moment between the insult and your reaction, between failure and what you decide to do next, between heartbreak and who you become afterward. Frankl calls this little space your last human freedom. Not freedom of circumstances, not freedom of control, but freedom of attitude. And here's the twist. Life is always asking you a question in that gap. When you suffer, the question becomes louder. Who will you choose to be? Right now. Notice something. You don't get to avoid the question. Ignoring it is also an answer. That's the scary part. But also the empowering part. Because even when you feel powerless, you still have that one choice, the most important choice. The danger of the existential vacuum. Now here's the section where Frankl gets a little prophetic. He warned that modern people, especially young adults, often fall into something he called an existential vacuum. It's that weird feeling that you're doing everything right, checking all the boxes, and yet somehow you feel empty, directionless, unmotivated, like you're floating through life without a why. Sound familiar? It's the quiet crisis no one talks about. Not depression, not anxiety, just emptiness. Frankl says this emptiness comes from one thing. We've forgotten that life isn't something to ask meaning from. It's something that asks meaning of us. Meaning is a responsibility, a task, a mission, not a vibe. He says life is constantly looking at you and asking, what are you going to do with today? How are you going to rise from this setback? What truth are you going to live? And if you don't answer, life keeps asking. Louder. And louder and louder. That anxiety you feel, that restlessness, that frustration that you should be further by now. Those aren't flaws. They're signals, warnings, messages that you're not living your meaning yet. And this is where Frankl gives you one of the most powerful mindset shifts ever recorded. You don't need an easy life. You need a meaningful one. Most people think the opposite of suffering is happiness. Frankl laughs at that idea. He says real happiness is a side effect. It happens naturally when you're living with purpose. People today chase comfort like it's salvation. Soft beds, easy tasks, minimal stress. Good vibes only. But Frankl says comfort without meaning turns into torture. Just a slow, comfortable decay. What you truly need, what your soul is starving for, is purpose. Not pleasure, not power. Purpose, that's what makes the suffering worth something. That's what transforms pain into strength. That's what makes you proud of who you become. And here's the twist. The moment you choose a purpose, your suffering stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like progress, even if your life is messy, even if you're not where you want to be, even if you're still healing from something heavy. Purpose gives pain a direction, and when pain has a direction, it becomes fuel. Here's where it gets real. Because Frankl isn't just talking about surviving suffering. He's talking about being transformed by it, forged by it, sharpened by it. And the truth is, most of the strongest, calmest, most grounded people you know didn't get that way because life was gentle with them. They got that way because life tested them. But here's the twist. Suffering doesn't automatically make you stronger. It only makes you stronger if you confront it with meaning. Otherwise, it just makes you bitter, closed off, exhausted. So Frankl asks a brutal question. Are you letting your suffering shape you or shatter you? Let's break this down so it hits home. The moment you break, and the moment you rise. Frankl saw something in the concentration camps that most of us never will. People didn't break at the worst moments. They broke the moment they lost their why. The moment they stopped believing there was anything worth living for. Their body followed. And the moment they found a reason, even the smallest one, their spirit came back online. You've probably felt a smaller version of this. That breakup that knocked the wind out of you. And suddenly then even simple tasks felt impossible. Or that dream you gave up on. And suddenly life felt heavy. Or that betrayal that shattered your trust. And suddenly you weren't yourself anymore. Pain doesn't break you. Losing meaning does. And gaining meaning, that's the moment you rise. The 3 paths to meaning. Frankl says there are only 3 ways humans can find deep meaning, even in suffering. 1. Through work or achievement. It doesn't have to be heroic. Saving someone, building something, finishing a project, creating something that didn't exist before. Even small actions can give massive meaning. Finishing one workout, writing one page, helping one person. Showing up when it's hard. When you contribute, you matter. 2. Through love. This is the one that surprises people. Frankl says, love isn't just romance. It's a mental and spiritual connection so powerful, it can pull someone through hell. He survived the camps largely by imagining conversations with his wife. Even though he didn't know she was already dead, love gave him strength. Love gave him something to endure for. Maybe for you it's your parents, your future kids, your partner, your younger self, your highest self. Love gives suffering meaning because it reminds you that you're not alone. 3. Through suffering itself. This is the one that changes lives. If suffering is unavoidable, you can choose your attitude toward it, and that choice and that dignity gives the suffering meaning. It's not about liking the pain. It's about facing it in a way that honors who you could become. You can suffer with despair, or you can suffer with purpose. One destroys you, the other builds you. You are being tested, but not in the way you think most people think life tests your strength. Frankl says no. Life tests your responsibility to your purpose, to your character, to the person you're capable of being. Whenever something painful happens, life is silently asking, will you step up or shut down? Will you grow from this or shrink? Will this break your spirit or break your limits? And the answer, every time, is in your attitude, not your circumstances. And yeah, at this point in the book, you can't help but ask, okay, but what if I have no clue what my purpose is? Wait till you hear this. Meaning isn't found. It's answered. Most people chase motivation. Most people wait for clarity. Most people hope for inspiration. But Frankl says meaning doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. Meaning presents itself as a question. What does life expect from you today? Not tomorrow. Not next year.
Let's bring this home, because everything up to now, all the stories, all the psychology, all the philosophy, it's pointing to one uncomfortable but liberating truth. Your suffering is not the enemy. Your hopelessness is. And the moment you begin to see suffering not as punishment, but as a question, everything changes. So let's answer that question together. The gap between who you are and who you could be. Every person alive has two versions of themselves, the one shaped by fear and the one shaped by meaning, the one who reacts and the one who chooses, the one who hides and the one who grows. Suffering pushes you right into the crossroads between those two selves. One road is familiar, blame, numbness, shutting down. The other road demands something harder, responsibility. Responsibility for your story, responsibility for your response, responsibility for who you become next. Frankl believed this responsibility is the key to personal freedom, because when you take responsibility, you take your power back. Not the power to control what happens to you, but the power to decide what it means. And meaning is where transformation begins. The shift from why me to what now? Most suffering becomes unbearable not because it's painful, but because it feels pointless. So the moment you shift from, why is this happening to me, to, what can I do with this? You step into the driver's seat of your life again. You stop being the victim of the story and start becoming the author. Pain becomes fuel. Suffering becomes information. Loss becomes perspective. Regret becomes a compass. Frankl would say, life has given you a task. Will you answer it? The meaning hidden in your own suffering. You might not realize it yet, but your heartbreak taught you how deeply you can feel. Your failure taught you what truly matters. Your mistakes taught you humility. Your grief taught you love. Your loneliness taught you identity. Your setbacks taught you strength. And no, this doesn't romanticize suffering. It dignifies it. Because suffering without dignity destroys you. But suffering with dignity transforms you. Frankl's greatest insight is this: meaning isn't found in avoiding pain. Meaning is found in rising above it. The freedom nobody can take from you. In the camps, Frankl watched men lose everything: family, health, food, control. But there was one thing the guards couldn't take: the freedom to choose their attitude, the freedom to decide, I will not become like this place. I will not let this darkness turn me dark. I will not let suffering steal my humanity. And if you have that, you have power nothing in the world can break. You might not control the storm, but you control the captain inside the boat. That's meaning. That's freedom. That's the hidden power of suffering. This is your turning point. Whatever you're carrying right now, the heartbreak, the pressure, the confusion, the silence, the fear, it's not meaningless. It's asking you to become someone clearer, someone stronger, someone more awake, someone capable of living with intention. And maybe this video found you today for a reason. Maybe life is whispering, it's time. Time to stop running. Time to stop numbing. Time to stop apologizing. Time to step into your own meaning. Because the moment you give your suffering a purpose, it loses its power to control you.
Final takeaway. Your suffering is not who you are. Your response to it is.